Welcome back to Conversations Over Coffee. In this episode, I will be talking to Marla Weston, a registered nurse and former CEO of the American Nursing Association, on her new enterprise as senior advisor of our nursing experience project here at Practicing Excellence. Well, Marla, all I can say about you is, wow. I mean, your experience is incredible. From the 9 years you spent as CEO of the American Nursing Association to your time at the VA. I mean, you've been all over the place, helping nurses, serving nurses. Being a nurse yourself, can you talk about how you started this journey and a few of the things that you saw or did that made you say, yeah, I really want to do this long term?
So, I was an ICU nurse for about a year. The hospital opened a new hospital and created, out of one intensive care unit, 2 units. Most of the experienced nurses went to 1 unit, and I and a few other people went to a 2nd unit. So I went from being the most novice nurse with the easiest patients on the night shift to the most experienced nurse with the hardest patients on the day shift.
Wow.
And I realized at that moment that it was all about learning, that I had to learn as much as possible, as fast as possible. But not only did I have to learn, but we together, my nursing colleagues, had to learn so we would survive. And when I say we, I mean we as nurses and our patients. And I really began to understand that it's not about an individual nurse working, it is about a team working together. And the more we strengthen each other's practice, the more we strengthen the whole of healthcare. And so my focus really became about teaching and learning and creating a practice environment where we bring out the best of every nurse. And that framed the rest of my career. I became a clinical nurse specialist, a nurse educator, ultimately a hospital nurse executive. I've worked in nonprofit hospitals and for-profit hospitals and government hospitals, and then at the association. So I've had this eclectic career, but it's really all been framed around the professional practice of nursing and bringing the best out of myself as a nurse and creating this environment where we support bringing out the best of each other.
Now, kind of moving on to when you've met us at Practicing Excellence, I think this is my favorite story from when we met in Las Vegas. Can you tell us about how you were first contacted with joining Practicing Excellence and kind of your first impressions of Guidon, our president?
Yeah, so Guidon talks about stalking me on LinkedIn. And it was a little bit like that. He emailed me repeatedly. And frankly, that's not uncommon. I get contacted by a lot of people. And, I will say he was persistent. And I eventually had a conversation with him in which he introduced me to Practicing Excellence. And I spent some time on the website, of course, and learning a little bit about the organization and a little bit about Steve and his work in founding Practicing Excellence. And it looked like an amazing product for physicians. And I could see that it was making a huge difference in the world for physicians and their patients. And so my conversation with Guidon was basically, you have an amazing piece of work. I am just not interested because my whole life is about improving the practice of nursing. And this is all about improving the practice for physicians. And he was like, well, that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because we are looking at moving into nursing. And, it was kind of like ding, ding, ding. That's when the party started. I had a chance just a week later to meet Steve. He happened to be coming to Washington, D.C. And I will just say that when we met, it was so synergistic. It was just like 2 people who had had very parallel experiences really connecting. And so at that point, I was like, this is a fit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he really should have led with the whole nursing bit first, I think.
Yeah. I kind of tease him about that he left out a critical piece of information. And the fact was, we just hadn't had a chance to talk yet, but it was really pretty funny.
Well, you did mention that you're reached out by a lot of different people. And so I can say personally, we're so excited to have you a part of the team. But I also wanted to ask you, kind of going off of what you said with Guidon, what about practicing excellence convinced you to join us? And what are you looking forward to starting in our future?
Well, there were a couple things about practicing excellence and the approach that I really liked. One is that it's evidence-based. Now, there's a lot of people out there, particularly now when nurses and other clinicians are really struggling, who are putting out all kinds of well-being and leadership products. Everybody can make up what they want to make up, but this is very evidence-based. It's always grounded in what is known to be true. And the work relies on experts. So that was the first thing that attracted me. There is an it there. The second thing is just the delivery mechanism, this idea of micro-learning, taking the content and rather than doing a brain dump, and some people describe it as, instead of doing an IV bolus, doing a continuous infusion. So that every week people spend 5 minutes, we all have 5 minutes, getting content. And that sort of constant infusion to not only teach us new things, but I think sometimes just reminding us of what we already know and bringing out the best of us, I think, was the second thing that I was really intrigued by, this whole micro-learning, which I think is the future of learning. And the third thing was really the way it always ends with tips, practical strategies to put this into use right away tomorrow, right? Or like watch the video, put it into practice in the next 5 minutes. So that all, I think, is what attracted me. That is what attracted me. What I came to understand after starting to work with the team is something else, though, that has me really excited. And that is that this content is delivered to everyone in the organization at the same time. So everybody gets the same 5 minutes each week. And I think the way that we have historically done education, particularly leadership development and coaching, is we send people off to a day or 2 day or a week program, maybe even a day a month, and they land back into the same work environment where other people haven't been exposed to the same thing. And that doesn't change the culture. That changes a person who has to try and drive the culture change. And so what I think is so magnificent about this approach is the way a learning community is created, where everybody's getting the same content. We're learning together, we're trying it out, we're reinforcing each other in learning and applying things. And that's a way to change the world. That's a way to change healthcare.
Well, thank you so much, Marla. I appreciate your answers, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you so much, Ryan.